Director Sanjeev Chopra is the voice of Asariri in this absolutely fascinating book by Rajni Sekhri Sibal, who has an intimate connection with Doon. She studied at Welhams, taught at the LBS National Academy, and has also served as the secretary to the Government of India. She has a strong wow connect, for we have had her book discussion on women in the IAS in the online afternoon as an author's session. You'll get to hear more about this book, which is making waves literally and metaphorically. To chair the session, we have with us Dehradun's most eminent educationist, the well known ex principal of Himjyoti, and the VOW's board member, Jyoti Dhawan. She also heads the Iti Natya and the children's vertical of VOW. In conversation about this book is Rajni's dear friend and class fellow, Rita Joshi, who has not only read and enjoyed the book, but feels that just not the theme, but the language of expression is inspirational. Well, the stage is set, but due to the pressing reasons, Miss Rajni couldn't join us today. But we have with us none other than our very own Sanjeev Chopra sir, who actually needs no introduction to the visitors to WOW. Please allow me to welcome this trio on the stage.
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here doing this session. We are definitely missing the presence of the author, Rajni Sekhri Sibal. Due to some reason and some kind of mix-up with dates, she was not able to come here. But anyway, I think Dr. Chopra, who's immortalized the voice of Asariri, is here with us, our festival director, and her very, very close friend. I think they spend their life together, their growing up years together. So who better to discuss and talk about this book than Dr. Sanjeev and Rita Joshi, who's also an educationist. And to start with, I think to initiate the audience, Asariri might sound a very strange word. It did to me. And as I, looked up and I saw, of course, it is Asariri. And Asariri in Sanskrit, a shariri, without a body. And it's also used in Tamil and in Bengali and in many, many other languages. And even if it's not talked about as an Asariri, which is an incorporeal voice, an embodied voice, a divine and astral voice. And agar Urdu mein bole to Nurani.
Absolutely.
And I think there are many instances from literature and history, and Sanjeev ji would definitely relate to it. Literature mein, it was so amazing to know that Charles Dickens heard his characters from his novels speak to him. And in fact, at times, he shared with another author that at times it feels that I'm just transcribing what they are speaking. And if we take examples from history, we have Joan of Arc, who heard voices, and she was then termed as a witch, and she was burnt at the stake. And, of course, the very, very famous philosopher, Socrates, who was made to drink poison. But anyway, our Asariri is not so morbid. Our Asariri here, what Rajni has written about is a very, very uplifting account of conversations with this disembodied voice, where it is the essence of life and the shibboleth of a life full of life is, I think, so endearing, and it really brings you back to reading the book time and time again. It is really something that you need to have at your bookshelf. And I would, without saying much, because I think both of them would like to talk more about the book, I'd like us all to hear Rajni speaking about the book first. So may we have the video, please?
Hello, everybody in Value Words. Sorry, I'm not able to be in Dehradun personally, but I'd be very happy to introduce you to my book, Asariri, published by Bloomsbury. It's also an audio book that's available on Google Audio. And to introduce you to the book and its essence, I would like to quote from an ancient scripture, and it's a translation, quote, "Man is a creature of will. Whatever is his will, so will he be. As is his desire, so is his will. As is his will, so is his deed. As are his deeds, so is his journey through life and beyond." The Asariri. Asariri is actually a book that's very close to my heart because it takes me back to days when I used to sit with my father early in the morning, and we would discuss about life and various matters. And a lot of the wisdom that he imparted to me, I would actually write down on scraps of paper. And when I was very young, he'd introduce me to these fantastic, absolutely exquisite scriptures, the Upanishads. Difficult to read, but over the years, there were parts that I would translate and write down for myself. And during the COVID, I located those scraps of paper and just felt, the way the world had come to a lockdown, and it was a very strange time when we lost a lot of people. Life was just not making sense. That even in a modern world like today, we're not able to control one small virus globally. Is when I decided that a lot of what has been said, the wisdom of the past, I would like to share with readers of today, because a lot of it is relevant. And when I started to put it all together, I realized that it wouldn't make sense to anyone if I just put it down, verbatim and in a narrative that was uninteresting. So Asariri was born as a conversation between the protagonist Nisha, who is a recent widow with 2 children, who also loses a father and is a little lost, wanting to understand life, wanting to understand questions that are bothering her. And Asariri. Asariri is a disembodied voice who has access to a pool of wisdom. In fact, if I may, best way of describing Asariri is what Bua, the aunt of the protagonist, had to say about him, and I quote, "An Asariri is a friendly, disembodied voice, a strong genetic tie across the ether, a cauldron of the combined wisdom of your ancestors, a pool of ancient knowledge, beliefs, and ways of life." Unquote. The Asariri communicates with those who are left behind if a person dies young or suddenly, and the soul is troubled by all that is left unsaid or undone, is a belief that Bua had. Now, the story begins with Nisha having lost her father and feeling absolutely at the kind of feelings all of us had during the COVID, where life was difficult to understand. And she was distraught when her husband died, but quite broken when the father went within a year, who was a support to her and her children. And a lot of questions that were left unanswered, unsaid, are put by her to Asariri. And Asariri explains what happiness is all about, how it actually resides within, and how to find happiness, how to control your anger, your ego, how to have balance in life, She has issues about, wanting to attain. Now, all of us are looking at worldviews that are rational, that are scientific, that make sense, that are not dogmatic. Asariri is a book for those because he has answers. He has answers to questions about life, death, and beyond. And to me, what has been said in the Upanishads about the ultimate truth, God, or whatever name we may call that ultimate truth, is explained beautifully by Asariri, and that is what gives solace to Nisha, and in, in fact enhances her growth within that 1 year, which she's actually, the book is set in various settings. She meets Asariri atop a mountain where daisies and irises grow wild. She meets Asariri at the edge of a tsunami ravaged Arabian Sea. She meets Asariri at the top of the Dharmadar range, which she's finished climbing. And of course, one of the things that I really enjoy is at the, it's something that Asariri said to her when she's climbed that peak, that an ascent to the top of a mountain, I quote, is the beginning of a new journey, for then there are other peaks to climb, which is actually what life is all about. And having gone through all this, that strong bond of friendship between the two of them is something that is, for the reader, at least for the writer definitely, helped me grow too. And I hope it will make sense to a lot of you. I hope you will enjoy the book. As the author and as someone who wanted a wider audience to hear about the audiobook, especially those who are impaired visually or those who are older and cannot really read the book, because I know one uncle of mine, before he passed away, that's the last book he read, and he took about a month to go through it because of the print. Both Sanjeev Chopra and I have put together an audiobook which is available on Google. Easy to download. It also makes for good hearing. I wish you all the readers, potential listeners of the book, the very best. May your lives be full of happiness and whatever you seek. Namaskar.
Good evening, everyone. Well, I was asked by Rajni if I could come and join this session because Rajni and I have been friends right from class 1. We've studied together right up to our senior Cambridge. And then we've been in touch. And I understand that while I was reading the book, that it is so much about Rajni. The way she has beautifully described so much in only a person who's really sensitive, who can feel all this, all these emotions, can create characters like Nisha and Asariri. I was initially when I picked up the book, I said, I'll take time to read it, but you couldn't put the book down because there's a lot out there. What I realized was that, especially somebody who has lost somebody so dear, how difficult it is for them to come back to a normal world so quickly. And that's exactly how we find that the Asariri came into the picture. And as explained earlier, it's a disembodied voice. And through our journey of life, whenever we are at a loss of thoughts, at a loss of emotions, we like to cling on to something. We want something that is going to give us support. And here, the protagonist, which is Nisha, finds that support in Asariri. Now, Asariri was introduced to her. I mean, she didn't know there was something like an Asariri, but her Bua is the one who introduces her to something. She says, whenever you are feeling low, whenever you feel that there is something which needs to be connected with somebody who has left, you will be able to hear that voice. And that voice is what gives solace to Nisha at this point of time. Now, not only the idea is unique, and the way she has described everything, it really touches the heart, as well as there is something so real in the entire theme, and yet mystic. So as we go along, I think we can discuss all that.
I think absolutely. You see, the only thing which, although Rajni did say that, I think the one good thing about this book is that it tells us that there will be ups and downs in life.
Of course.
So although Rajni did say that may you all be happy, but I think the whole purpose of this book is to tell us that we cannot always be happy. And I think it's very important for all of us to realize that life cannot be full of joy, always. Life has to be, like the seasons and the sun. It'll be terrible to live on the equator, where I think it's nice to live in Dehradun because we have an extreme winter. We have a spring which is very visible. We have an autumn, and we have a monsoon which you enjoy in the beginning, and then you get fed up with it. So each of us seasons is a season where, except for the spring season. So I think the beauty of Asariri is that you can always communicate, and there's someone who's wanting to send you a signal and a message. Are you willing to listen? I thought the point which I got from that book, Rita ji, was that there is that voices all out there, but often we are not we're not willing to. Let me just put it. One is the aspect of tuning. The other is that we aren't getting the shortwave right. We aren't. The moment you get it, it's so beautiful. And therefore, this Asariri, this voice, and I enjoyed being that disembodied voice because for a moment you felt. It was humanizing the divine or divinizing the human, as they say. So you suddenly felt like that. So I think Asariri is and there is no story really at one level. At one level, it's just a conversation. Everybody, all of us have to be through moments of grief. At any point of time, there's someone in the hospital. There's someone we see that passing on, and all. So I think it's that aspect which I felt was very great about this book.
No, but also, despite the ups and downs, we see the positive side of Nisha. That how she's able to, go through that with brevity and come out of it, and with such a positive attitude, and that's the beauty. But the other thing I felt was that we are so busy in our world today that we do not have time to sit down and listen to that voice, as you said.
Yes.
We don't make that effort. As he said, that fine-tuning, that's exactly what's lacking. But surely there is something. But what I felt, the deeper side of it, was that there is an answer to every query within us.
Yes.
It's there. It's just that we don't seriously get down to it and listen to that. There's no time for introspection, but we are blessed to have all the answers within us.
There's one more aspect which I wanted to share with both of you and with the audience. You see, this 13-day mourning period is very important. There's a book which I read called Death in America, where somebody dies. And you don't know how to react to that death because the chap is living and then he dies, and there's that 13 days to mourn. The 13 days are now shortened to 4 days, but I think 13 days is a good enough time because after 13 days, you just laugh. I mean, you just have to. With all those customs and things, So it helps to deal, it helps to cope with that. So I think that's something which is so important. So although sometimes, this looks very odd, ki ye ho raha hai, wo ho raha hai, wo raha hai, but I think this 13 day of grief or 17 day of grief or 40 days of grief, according to different religious traditions, it is very, very important. And death cannot be made impersonal. Death is a personal thing which affects us. And if there is a social mechanism to deal with it, so much the better. So that is the role of community and family, which I thought, right to the very beginning, the 13 days of mourning, how the Bua, takes over, how the Bua talks, how the cousins have left, the family has left, and then
Shaving of the head.
yeah, shaving of. So I think all these are important aspects of coping with grief, which is something, and then you transcend that grief. So I think that's another aspect which this generation may not be. So I think 13 days of period of mourning, I think it's very important. But Asariri can come to you only after 13 days and not before.
I also realized that, while I was reading it, that we don't realize what an influence our parents are on us, our friends, the environment around us. We're just imbibing things without really knowing that we are. And that reflects later. Like, if you read this book, it's not an autobiography, but I wouldn't call it anything short of an autobiographical narration, because she talks about all the scriptures that she has mentioned at the beginning of every chapter. She has quoted a verse either from the Upanishads or some of the other scriptures as well. And which, of course, she did say in her video when we were listening to it, that she had picked up those scraps, what her father used to share with her, and she'd written it on a piece of paper. So that is there at the beginning of every chapter. The setting is Missouri, Dehradun. She was an IS officer, and she also helped in the people, evicting the people who were struck by the tsunami. And she's experienced everything. And so that has been depicted here so closely. And anybody who has experienced this can beautifully bring it out in this form. Also, I don't know if you realized, you've done the part of Asariri, how, without much effort, Asariri has actually become the main character, one of the main characters.
In one of my
Yes,
conversations
in fact.
with Rajni, I did mention, and she laughed. She says, "Yes, you guessed it." I said, "He's almost a co-protagonist, like
Exactly.
it's."
No, I would say he is, because I'm the voice of Asariri.
Yeah.
So that was something amazing.
What I liked was her initial disbelief when Bua mentions
Yeah.
Asariri, and then her kind of resentment, and then slowly it, the comfort level develops, and it's almost like banter, when they exchange,
Exactly.
So it was so comforting, and I think what comes out of Asariri and what she absorbs towards the end, she's, such a content person, and that's what comes out of the entire book, I feel.
True.
That
You see, there's another aspect to it. That is the very deep Indic philosophy here. That it is not that, the difference between the living and the non, the difference between the living and those who've gone. So it's not such a break as such. It's not that, it's not a binary of the living and the dead. So I think this break of the binary between the living and the dead, which is there in the Judaic tradition, that either you live or you don't live. So that is broken in this book. So you live and you die and you live beyond life. So when you say "Jeete raho," which is a very common Punjabi, blessing, that. So I think these are all very interesting. And there's one more thing which I wanted to share. That is that heroes are not those who have won all their medals or who won all their glory. Ordinary people are heroes. And when the situation comes, when the crunch comes, it is the ordinary patwari, it is the ordinary clerk, it is the ordinary person who's working in an office, it is the cab driver, it is the Asha worker. It is these people are the real heroes, which we saw, whether it is in the rescue of the Silkyara tunnel or whether it is during COVID days. Well, a lot of us who happen to be in the limelight, we get a lot of credit. But the actual heroes are those who live and who actually function. So I think that's
Which is
another
brought,
aspect
yes,
which
Nagaraju.
yeah, Nagaraju.
Yes.
So this is therefore I would I would recommend especially to the younger people here that you must pick up a copy of this book because it really transcends. So it's a very ordinary story at one level, coping with grief. But in that coping of grief, there's much more to it.
So much
so
sublimity.
rather than use the word cope, let's use the word transcend.
Yes.
So here's a question of transcendence. And that transcendence is a very, very Indic philosophy, very, very, if one could use the word, very, very Sanatani in its context.
And like we understand after reading this that, yeah, this body is nothing. You continue living. And there are many, many lives beyond what is
Beyond
here
this.
and now. So it gives, I think, a lot of solace to people who've just, I think almost everybody would connect with it because sometime or the other you lose some loved one. So you would connect with what she says.
And you never know when you're going to become the disembodied voice.
No, and the beauty I found was that through Asariri, which was the medium actually, she has discussed various things. She's talked about anger, she's talked about life goals, contentment, parenting, karma, kismat.
Yeah.
You know, so many issues which are really relevant. She's talked about, taking responsibility for what you wish to do and lending wings to that, to what you really want to do. So even for the young generation, I think it's a very, very important read. Besides this, I would like to read something about her visual imagery. She's got this beautiful
Style of word picture.
gift, I would call it, where she can pen so beautifully certain. There's one particular one I really enjoyed, where she talks about tufts of fluffy clouds waltzed towards each other, met, changed their shapes, and then drifted apart again. A little like life, Nisha sighed. She laid back and tried to keep pace with the saga of the clouds as they spun stories across the sky. Her senses were intoxicated by the aroma of spring in the Himalayas, a heady mix of irises and daisies that grow wild amidst the fresh green grass. So she's put it in a poetic and yet such a beautiful way.
Simple way.
I love.
You
What
feel
was
that
your
it's,
favorite part? Sanjeev ji.
I enjoyed the whole book, but I think it was the conversation when she goes to to Puducherry for that tsunami. When she goes there, and then when she's totally dazed and she's totally confused, and then Asariri tells her that it's okay. People will die, people will live. This world will go on. Which brings you back to the Bhagavad Gita, which brings you
Yes.
back to all these things, which makes you realize that, well, we all have our troubles, but all our troubles will also pass away. I think that is what it was. So I think because we're running out of time, therefore let's hear the audio for some time, and then maybe we'll have the last two points for both of you. Yeah.
It was obviously an innocuous matter, for soon she'd forgotten what the argument was about. The view was amazing. Nisha rested her back against the trunk of a pine tree and sat down amongst the wild daisies. The sky was a cobalt blue. Tufts of fluffy clouds waltzed towards each other, met, changed their shapes, and then drifted apart again. A little like life, Nisha sighed. She laid back and tried to keep pace with the saga of the clouds as they spun stories across the sky. Her senses were intoxicated by the aroma of spring in the Himalayas, a heady mix of irises and daisies that grow wild amidst the fresh green grass. At some point of time, Nisha dozed off, lulled by the sound of the wind whistling through the pines, and her last coherent thought was, wow, life is beautiful.
Yes, Nisha, life is indeed beautiful.
Nisha felt a soft breeze through her hair, almost like a hand gently caressing her forehead, as if to bless her.
Thank you. I think we can have last words from you.
You know, where she's actually comfortably sitting on the mountainside, and they sat side by side amid waves of silence that seemed to echo back from the snow capped mountains. This is comfortable. I could get used to it, Nisha thought. She thought. She didn't speak. And yes, it is comforting and it speaks volumes too. And that was Asariri reading her mind. Wow, you can actually read my mind. And now comes to the essence. Indeed, I can, through silence. You can also communicate with yourself. There is a Brahmand, a whole world inside you that you haven't discovered yet. Just cut the external noise out. You will find all your answers within. I think that said it all so beautifully. And I think Asariri is a book that I will definitely open and read time and again. I'm going to have it by my bedside, and I would strongly recommend each of you to get a copy of this. And I thank both of you for bringing Asariri to life in the absence of Rajni, Sekhri, Sibal.
Poetic justice in that, you needed to be disembodied. Rajni doesn't have to be present for a book, so I think it's only this book which could have happened this way.
It has indeed been a pleasure to listen to this fascinating conversation. Now, I request Value of Words Shaptavali chairperson Mrs. Rashmi Chopra to kindly come on the stage and felicitate the panelists.
Well, I normally don't say anything, but in this session, I'll say one thing. I just recently read a quote on this, that you actually die when the last person who can remember you is no more. So then death happens much after you have actually left your physical body. But I thank you for a beautiful session, and I take it as a personal honor to be able to say thank you to you.